afternoon. Thank you for having me join you today, and it's a pleasure to participate in this year's MCon 12. My name is Maya Nista Smith, and I have the pleasure of serving as Chief Executive Officer of Mobilize.org. I'm happy to be with you today to tell you a little bit about what we've learned about millennials in the workplace and why this generation is unique and needs to be viewed as an asset, and provide some tips on what works and what might not work. Mobilize.org is a resource to you, your organizations, and the important work that you're doing, so please feel free to get in touch with me about this presentation or our work, or to answer any of your millennial questions. So here in this first slide, you'll see the importance of why this conversation needs to be had. We currently have 4 generations in today's workforce, so understanding the differences and characteristics of millennials is important in creating productive workplaces. This generation, I'm happy to report, is motivated, optimistic, energetic, and as both a millennial myself and an employer of millennials, I'm proud to work for and with this generation. So as you'll see, by 2020, 46% of the workers in this country will be millennials. Mobilize defines millennials as young people born between the years of 1976 and 1996. So our definition of millennials has them currently at ages about 16 to 36. Mobilize.org was founded 10 years ago, and our mission is to empower and invest in millennials to create and implement solutions to social problems. Our programming model is to convene millennials to talk about the issues that they care most about, provide them an opportunity to work collaboratively to propose solutions to those challenges, and then invest in them financially and otherwise to implement those solutions in communities across the country. I've had, through my 7 years at Mobilize, the privilege of investing in some of the most inspirational and innovative projects of our time. For more information on our investments and to learn more about the programs of Mobilize, please visit our website at mobilize.org. Over the past 10 years, we've become experts in all things millennials and really enjoy sharing our lessons learned with the sector and our communities. So you'll see our Twitter handle, our website link, and of course, I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of the items covered in this presentation or any questions you have about millennials, and you'll find my information below. So who are the millennials? This generation, as is the case with every generation, is really unique. We're the most diverse generation in history. We're the largest generation in history at 80 million strong, followed closely at 79 million by the baby boomers. We're the most tech-savvy generation in history, creating the communication tools that are shaping our world, our democracy, and the way we interact on an everyday basis. This generation is collaborative and entrepreneurial, both out of desire and out of need, and they're committed to doing well and doing good. And we'll talk more about the difference or how both are married together in the minds of millennials in a minute. This generation is also facing some serious financial challenges. This generation is the first generation who will be paying off our student loans as we send our own children to college. The average young person holds over $28,000 in debt, and the top 2 reasons for that debt are educational costs and healthcare costs. Although the challenges are real and the problems are serious, according to a recent Demos poll, this generation, 71% of us believe that we'll be able to achieve the American dream. And so I believe this generation, although facing serious challenges, is idealistic, hopeful, and willing to collaborate to improve communities and the future for everyone. So those are just some quick snippets about who the millennials are. Some interesting statistics to shape our conversation, which are cited at the end of the presentation. 60% of millennials are extremely satisfied with where they work. That is well above the 54% of boomers and Gen Xers who said that. Currently, 56% of millennials declaring digital portfolios and online resources are more effective than traditional resumes in landing a job. So not only are we working differently, we're getting jobs differently. Half of the 80 million millennials are already in the workforce. As I mentioned, we have 4 generations with very different characteristics in the workforce, and that'll shape both how millennials like to work and what turns millennials off in the workplace. 3/4 of millennials report that they have accessed online collaborative tools and online applications from free public websites when those technologies were not available at work or not meeting their expectations. Millennials, as I mentioned, really appreciate collaborative work environments. They seek employers who demonstrate social responsibility through workplace efforts, and 23% of recent college graduates wouldn't take a job where they couldn't make or take personal phone calls. Why that matters, we'll talk about in a minute. But now to talk about what works and what might not work. So there have been a number of studies, some of which are sourced at the end of this presentation, and I've sort of compiled what works and what doesn't work, and we'll go through each bullet point and talk a little bit more about what that means. So what works, what we've heard from millennials about what they look for in their ideal workplaces. The first thing that we've heard about is flexibility, the ability to not have to sit behind a desk from 9 to 5 every single day. At mobilize.org, we have a number of ways that we address this flexibility. The first is through an idea that was started about 6 months ago in our office, and it's a virtual Tuesday. So Tuesdays of each week, our staff is allowed to work in pajamas from coffee shops from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. in whatever way they work best. Millennials work hard, they work long hours, and they're extremely committed to their jobs. And so the ability to allow them to do life, go to the doctor's appointment, grocery store, post office, is something that helps them, helps keep them happy in the workplace. If we take this week, for example, for me, I'll be in Boston, New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. And so if my productivity was measured by the amount of time I spent behind a desk, it wouldn't look really productive. But if you include BlackBerry and time online and time at 30,000 feet up in the air responding to emails, the flexibility that my job provides me is one of the #1 reasons for why Mobilize has been able to recruit and retain such top talent, and has actually an exceptionally long employee tenure. So we're really proud of that. And workplaces that are adapting these flexible work environments, whether it's flexible hours or telecommuting or a hybrid combination of being in the office or out of the office, allowing for travel schedules, those are the employers that millennials are seeking out and staying with longer. The second piece of what works is transparency. The idea that millennial employees understand how decisions are made, why decisions are made, and how their voice can be valued within the decision-making process. Millennials, for a number of different reasons, don't react well to the "I told you so" mentality, which I actually would imagine that's not uniquely millennial, but we want to know how decisions are being made and how our voice can be included in them. So transparent and flat hierarchical workplaces are ones that millennials feel like they excel at, and they want to feel as though their opinions are valued and their voice is heard. So that's another thing we worked hard at here at mobilize.org. And I just want to make sure and include the caveat that there are very few examples of organizations that have perfected each of these. And I think what's more important than having perfected these is really making an authentic effort to engage your millennial employees in talking about these topics and helping to plan and build these topics, and in making sure that when something's missing, that we know why and how to fix it. The third bullet point is really important: career advancement opportunities. So it's one interesting statistic is that my parents' generation, they're said to have had 2 jobs over their lifetime. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but in general, millennials will have 17. So transitions need to be celebrated, as young people have much longer career trajectories than previous generations. But also, you can mitigate the transitions, the number of times young people leave their jobs, by making sure that they're clear on the career advancement opportunities within a current position. There's a lot of talk in older generations about needing to put in your time or needing to go somewhere else before you can advance. But the most successful employers have really clear leadership development investments and career advancement plans that they go over regularly with millennials. Millennials want to know what they're working for today and where that'll take them tomorrow. And the ability to do that within one employer is something that's really exciting, but doesn't happen often enough. Currently, we try and talk to our program managers to say, okay, you're a program manager today, but you want to be chief operating officer in a couple of years. Here are the steps you need to take, and here's what you need to prove to us and show us in order to make that career leap. What goes hand in hand with that is the fourth bullet point about leadership development support. We want to make sure that we're learning how to get better on the job, and millennials really crave that type of investment. So whether it's a public speaking class, a seminar on how to fundraise, an employer's investment in making better employees is really important. And I think it's something that the nonprofit sector has not done enough in. If you think about, and anecdotally, my younger brother works in the finance sector in New York City, and when he was starting, he had a 6-week course on how to do PowerPoint and Excel and all of these important things that he would need to do in his everyday presentations. And you had the young men and women from American Express with the young men and women from Prudential, and across the financial sector, they came together to say, we're not going to improve this workforce for our specific company, we're going to improve this workforce for the financial sector, because regardless of where they go and where they leave and where they end up, the investment in these young people is going to benefit this sector. And so leadership development support is really important. And I think there's some amazing organizations that help support young leaders, like YNPN, Annie Casey Foundation, Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, to name a few. The fifth point is really important: intergenerational mentorship. Millennials are really eager to learn from other generations. Although we may seem arrogant at times, intergenerational mentorship across all the research that we've seen is something that millennials really value and look for. And it needs to be mutually beneficial. We need to be viewed as being valuable for more than just setting up a Facebook page. And we need sort of an authentic engagement where we have the opportunity to share what we can offer as well. So intergenerational mentorships, it's hard to manufacture that. You can't say, hi, I'm willing to be your mentor. Those are things that need to happen organically. But for employers to keep an eye out for mentorship opportunities for millennials is something that will pay back in dividends. Earlier, I mentioned this idea of doing well and doing good, and it's really backed up by a recent millennial study conducted by Pew. And Pew asked millennials that at the end of their lives, how will they have rated having had a successful life? And interestingly, the number 1 and 2 answers were being a good parent and having a strong family. But the number 3 response was being able to give back to my community or do good in my community. You had to go all the way to number 6 to find anything about making money or being famous. And I think that idea of being able to give back while maintaining a work-life balance and not separating work and life is really indicative of what motivates millennials. And so they look for employment opportunities and a workplace in which the two are married. At mobilize.org, we provide opportunities for our team to volunteer. And one time I was giving a presentation and talking about the fact that we take a full day every couple months to be out of the office volunteering in a community or with an organization that seemingly has nothing to do with our mission. And these people were appalled about the productivity or in the office time or team building that was suffering because of that. And I actually would argue and continue to argue that our team is more productive, happier, and more connected to our communities because of the opportunity to step away from our work. So I think that's one of the most important things that millennials look for in the workplace, the opportunity to give back, not as something extra, but as something really tied to their career opportunities. The last point on what works is providing feedback. Oftentimes, millennials are accused of seeking instant gratification, whether it's through the access to information through technology or the fact that, our parents had to buy extra refrigerators to put up all the drawings because everything that we did was a work of art. Millennials really enjoy receiving feedback, interestingly, both positive and negative, on how to grow and what they're doing well. And so ensuring that in your organization you have authentic mechanisms to provide feedback to your millennial employees, and that vice versa, they're able to provide feedback from you. So again, an example from our organization, we as an organization, I evaluate all of our staff members once a year, and they evaluate me as well. So those sort of reciprocal feedback mechanisms are things that I'm glad to see some organizations adopting, but there's not enough of that yet. So to what doesn't work? One thing would be to say the opposite of all of these things, but some more additional ideas on what might not work. So the first point is really one of the pet peeves that I have in the field, and I know there's differing opinions on this, but I think young people, one of the driving characteristics of the work of Mobilize is that we were hearing from the young people that we worked with around the country that they were being sick of being talked to as if they were the future leaders instead of being recognized for the immense capacity that they had to impact change today in the jobs that they had at the ages that they were with the experience that they had. So this idea of millennials always being future, next, or emerging is actually really detrimental, in my opinion, to productive workplaces. Of course, young people are going to have 17 jobs over their lifetime if they're always being told that at some point in the future they will be a leader instead of being recognized for their capacity that they have to lead today. And so I think while I would completely agree that at no point in my career or in my life will I ever stop learning or having something to learn or having something valuable that can be taught to me by somebody else, I think this language around future, next, or emerging is actually dangerous to employee satisfaction, to millennial leadership development, and I caution organizations who say it from the best possible places to really think about what they're modeling for their young people instead of being recognized as leaders at the points at which they are. A second thing that we hear a lot as millennials and in the workplace is when I was your age. And I think while this is a really authentic approach and intent to develop intergenerational mentorship opportunities, or that's how it's intended, oftentimes it comes off as a lack of appreciation for the situations that, the way in which millennials are coming to age today, the challenges that you're facing, and vice versa. There needs to be much more reciprocal learning intergenerationally so that we appreciate the experiences of past generations. Millennials often fall into the trap of believing that this is the first time that they're facing the challenges that they're facing today, and what can be learned on how to cope with these challenges, whether it's in a recession, tough economic times, periods of war. Other generations have experienced that in a number of different ways, and so we can learn from each other. But that condescending conversation about when I was your age or needing to put in your time is not something that millennials respond to well, even if it really does come from a positive place. So the language that we use in trying to build intergenerational partnerships is really important, and avoiding that condescending language is important. The third bullet point, as I mentioned before, is a lack of technology access. One of the statistics I mentioned was that young people need an opportunity to take personal calls if they come up during the workplace. But another interesting study that came up was that young people would rather have access to Facebook in the workplace than receive a raise. And what that means is this is a really tightly connected, networked community of millennials, and they want to have access to one another. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, but the majority of the time I'm talking about a trip that I took for work, talking about a great organization that I donated to. I think the idea that social networks are in some way detrimental to an organization is an antiquated idea, and I think millennials are really pioneering how to use technology and use the social networking and use both their personal and professional communities and the merging of the two to build up the reputations of organizations, increase awareness of the work that we're doing. And I think organizations that limit technology access at work suffer in a big way in terms of millennial recruitment and retention. As I mentioned before, the lack of input mechanisms in making millennials feel like their opinions aren't valued and that there's not a place for them to say this is what works and this is what doesn't work for me and this is what I'd like changed is really stifling to this generation. And non-collaborative work environments where they don't, millennials really enjoy working in a team, they really enjoy getting other people's opinions, they enjoy feeling as though they're part of something larger. And so organizations that don't provide those opportunities suffer in terms of millennial recruitment and retention as well. What I should stop and say is that this, one of our board members asked us to make a hoodie that said millennials. It's not an age, it's an attitude. And so although I completely drink the millennial Kool-Aid and believe that these generational distinctions serve as important guideposts in terms of how we interact, what we can learn from one another, and the unique characteristics of different generations. They really are just that, guideposts. Not every millennial is tech savvy. Not every millennial values collaborative work environments. So take all of this with a grain of salt, and in terms of generalizations of how this generation is working, what they're saying, and this is all backed up by some of the following links and statistics, and some additional resources that I've found really valuable. First, 7 tips in managing millennials. There's an overwhelming amount of literature that exists right now on millennials in the workplace, on the differences between generations, and I found this article to be particularly helpful in breaking down some of the tips that we talked about today. If you're interested in learning more about who the millennials are, what drives them, I really think this Pew Millennial Study is the best of the best, and it shows who the millennials are, why they go to work, how they like to work, the spirituality and religion of millennials, and it's really one of the most comprehensive reports that I've seen, and I think it's really fantastic, so definitely check it out. The last would be the Millennial Impact Report, which just recently came out and is sponsored by one of our partners here at MCon, the Millennial Impact Report that shows giving trends for millennials, engagement statistics about millennials, and one that's not on here but that I would add is Circle out of Tufts University. They have a lot of youth voting statistics, and in this election year, how young people show up at the polls is going to be really important in helping to shape the narrative of this generation. So these are some of the sources of the statistics that I mentioned, and my favorite quote about millennials is included up top, and it's by Pearl S. Buck, and it says, "The young do not know enough to be prudent, therefore they attempt the impossible and achieve it generation after generation." And I think that really captures the idealism, the hopefulness, and the ambition of this generation that is willing to be put to work in this tough time for America, and in this help us solve some of the largest problems that we're facing. So in conclusion, it's been a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you today, and I hope that we can continue this conversation beyond MCon 12. So to continue this conversation, or for more information about anything covered in this presentation, please feel free to shoot me an email at maya@mobilize.org. Have a conversation with us on our blog at mobilize.org. Find us on Twitter or Facebook. But my favorite part of my job is to be a resource to organizations and young people and projects that are doing important work for and with millennials. And I'm a millennial in every way that I mentioned above. And when I was younger, my mom used to tell me that if I was able to find a job that I loved, I'd never work a day in my life. And I guess it's been 2,200 days or so in the past 7 years at Mobilize, and I certainly feel that way. And if I can help through the knowledge that I've somehow acquired to make other millennials and workplaces feel that way, it would be an honor. So thank you for having me today, and I look forward to hearing from you.